I used to believe that family meant fairness, that no matter what happened, there was a baseline of respect, of love, of decency. Turns out I was wrong. The day it all fell apart started like any other. I was sitting at the kitchen table, buried in my laptop, trying to finalize my college decision. Acceptance letters lay scattered around me, the weight of my future pressing down on my shoulders. It was the kind of stress that felt good, the kind that meant something big was coming. In the background, my parents whispered in hushed voices. I wasn't paying attention at first, just another conversation about Daniel's wedding, another round of endless discussions about venues, catering, guest lists. I had learned to tune it out. After all, my older brother was the golden child, and his upcoming wedding was the only thing that seemed to matter these days. But then I heard my name. I froze, my fingers hovering over my keyboard. Took care of the rest, right? My father muttered. A pause. Then my mother's voice, softer but clear. It's done. What about Ethan? A longer pause. A hesitation. He'll be fine, she said, brushing it off like it was nothing. He can take out loans. My stomach twisted. My head snapped up. Loans? I turned to face them, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. What are you talking about? They both looked up, startled, as if they hadn't expected me to hear. Oh, sweetheart, my mother said, her voice laced with artificial sweetness. Don't worry about it. I pushed my chair back, standing up. Don't worry about what? My father sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one being unreasonable. Ethan, sit down. I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. What did you mean when you said I could take out loans? The look they exchanged told me everything. The silent conversation, the guilt, the flicker of fear that I was catching on too fast. Finally, my mother exhaled. We had to move some things around to make sure everything was covered. I swallowed hard. What things? Again that hesitation. Then finally she said it. We used your college fund. The words crashed into me like a brick wall. My ears started ringing. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to my dad, hoping, praying that he would tell me she was wrong, but he just sighed again. Ethan, don't overreact. Overreact? I let out a short, bitter laugh. You used my college fund for Daniel's wedding, and you think I'm overreacting? My mother frowned, looking at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You can always take out loans, Ethan. College isn't going anywhere. I gripped the edge of the table, my hands shaking. That money was supposed to be for my education. It was family money, my dad corrected, his tone firm, as if that justified it. And we had to make a choice. A choice? My voice cracked. Between my future and Daniel's wedding? Ethan, my mother sighed, exasperated now. It's not just a wedding. It's one of the most important days of his life. We couldn't just give him a half-hearted celebration. I felt like I was going to throw up. I had always known that Daniel was their favorite, but this was something else. This wasn't just favoritism. This was them telling me loud and clear that his one day mattered more than my entire future. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. And you weren't even going to tell me? We were going to sit you down and explain, my father said, like that made it better. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. I clenched my jaw. Right on cue, Daniel strolled into the kitchen, humming to himself. He stopped short when he saw me, his eyes flicking between me and our parents. What's going on? I turned to him, my blood running cold. You knew, didn't you? He blinked. Knew what? That they used my college fund to pay for your wedding. For a second, just a second, I saw it, the flicker of guilt, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. He shrugged. Mom and Dad said it was fine. They said you'd be okay. I felt something inside me snap. You didn't even ask me, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. You didn't even care, Daniel frowned. Ethan, why are you making such a big deal out of this? I laughed. Actually laughed. Because it is a big deal, I snapped. That money was for my future, and I gestured wildly, my voice rising. You just took it. Daniel rolled his eyes. Oh my God. Are you seriously going to throw a tantrum over this? I turned to my parents. And you're really okay with this? My mother gave me a small, condescending smile. Sweetheart, you'll understand when you're older. I stared at them. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out the door. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember turning the key in the ignition or backing out of the driveway. All I remember is the way my hands trembled on the steering wheel, the way my vision blurred as I tried to blink back the tears, the way my whole world shattered in an instant. I didn't go back home that night. I didn't even know where I was driving at first. My hands were gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My breath was uneven, sharp, like I couldn't get enough air. My mind kept replaying their words over and over. It's family money. You can take out loans. You'll understand when you're older. I clenched my jaw, pressing harder on the gas. I had never felt so small before, so disposable, like I was just an afterthought in my own damn family. When I finally pulled into a parking lot, I wasn't even sure where I was. Some old diner, its neon sign flickering above the entrance. I sat there for a while, my head resting against the steering wheel, trying to get my breathing under control. I wanted to scream, or cry, or maybe both. Instead, I reached for my phone. One name stood out in my contacts, Sophie. I hesitated. It had been a while since we talked. Life got busy. I always figured we'd catch up eventually. But now, sitting alone in my car, with nowhere else to go, I realized how badly I needed someone. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit call. She picked up on the second ring. Ethan, the moment I heard her voice, something inside me cracked. Hey, I know this is random, but where are you? She interrupted, her voice sharp with concern. I exhaled shakily. Nowhere good. Send me your location. I'm coming. And just like that, I wasn't alone. Sophie didn't ask too many questions when she picked me up. She took one look at me, red eyes, clenched fists, the whole mess that I was, and just nodded. You can crash at my place. So I did. She gave me a blanket, made me tea, and sat with me in silence until I was ready to talk. When I finally told her everything, she didn't react the way my parents had. She didn't brush it off or tell me to understand their side. She didn't act like I was being dramatic. She just shook her head, anger flashing in her eyes. That's messed up, Ethan. Really messed up. I let out a breath. Yeah, you're not going back there, are you? I hesitated. I don't know, she frowned. Ethan, they stole from you. They betrayed you. Are you seriously going to let them get away with it? I swallowed hard. What else can I do? She stared at me for a long moment, then said, start over. 2 words. Simple. But they hit me like a punch to the gut. Start over. No college, no family support, no safety net. Just me. It terrified me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized what other choice did I have. Because the alternative, crawling back home, pretending like it didn't matter, like I wasn't furious, no. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. The next morning, I started looking for jobs. It wasn't glamorous. A small town cafe, early shifts, long hours, aching feet. But I took whatever I could get. I wasn't just working for a paycheck, I was working for my freedom. Meanwhile, Daniel's wedding planning went on as if nothing had happened. The pictures, the celebrations, the constant reminders of how important his big day was. I wasn't invited. Not that I would have gone. They never called to ask where I was, never checked to see how I was doing. It was like I had just disappeared from their lives. And honestly, that was fine, because while they were busy planning Daniel's perfect wedding, I was planning something else, something bigger, something better. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Starting over wasn't easy. At first, it was just about survival. Rent wasn't cheap, and neither was food, so I worked whatever shifts I could get. Mornings at the cafe, evenings at a bookstore, and sometimes odd jobs in between. I barely had time to think, which was good thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to anger. Sophie was my only real support system. She'd force me to take breaks, bring me leftover food from her job at the library's cafe, and occasionally drag me out for some fresh air. You can't just work your way out of being pissed off, she told me once, handing me a coffee. I smirked. Want to bet? But she wasn't wrong. No matter how many hours I clocked, the resentment didn't fade. Every late night shift, every aching muscle, every time I had to say, sorry, I can't afford that right now. It reminded me why I was here. Because of them. Because they stole my future and handed it to Daniel on a silver platter. And they didn't even care. That anger kept me going. It fueled me in ways I didn't expect. I stopped seeing my jobs as just jobs. I started watching, learning. At the cafe, I paid attention to the business side of things, how they handled orders, suppliers, marketing. At the bookstore, I studied what sold, what people wanted. And at night, when I got home exhausted, I'd sit in front of my laptop and teach myself everything I could about running a business. I fell down a rabbit hole of online income side hustles, passive income, e-commerce. Most of it was garbage, but some of it made sense. So I experimented. I started small, reselling things online, flipping cheap finds into profit. It wasn't much at first, $20 here, 50 there, but it was something. And then I hit my first real success. One night, while scrolling through an entrepreneur forum, I stumbled across a thread about digital products, e-books, templates, guides, things that could be created once and sold indefinitely. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I didn't have money to invest in inventory, but I had knowledge. I had skills, so I started writing. At first, it was basic guides on productivity, budgeting, things I'd learned from clawing my way back up. I packaged them into simple PDFs and listed them online for a few bucks each. I didn't expect much. Then one morning, I woke up to my first sale, $9.99. It wasn't life-changing, but it was proof. Proof that I could make money without trading my time. I doubled down. I refined my products, expanded into online courses, learned about marketing. Every spare moment, every break at work, I was building. By the time Daniel's wedding came and went, I was making enough to quit one of my jobs. By the end of that year, I had made my first 6 figures. And by the time I turned 23, I was a millionaire. The moment it really hit me wasn't when I saw the number in my bank account. It was when I signed the lease for my own place. No roommates, no shared spaces, just mine. Standing in the middle of that empty apartment, I let out a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding. I had done it. Without them, without their help, without their stolen money. I had built something from nothing, and they had no idea. Not yet. For a while, I kept to myself. I didn't reach out. Didn't check in. If they had any idea how well I was doing, they never said anything. Until the day my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Something told me to answer. I pressed the button, lifting it to my ear. Hello? There was a pause. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in years. Ethan? I knew that voice. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile curling at my lips. Mom, wow. Didn't expect to hear from you. She let out a shaky laugh, the kind people do when they're nervous. Well, sweetheart, it's been a while. How have you been? I could feel it coming. I played along. Oh, you know, just making a living. Another pause. Then, softer, almost hesitant, she said, we were actually hoping we could talk to you about something. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? She cleared her throat. You see, things have been a little difficult for us financially lately. There it is. I almost laughed. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. Difficult, huh? There was a pause. Yes, Mom said quickly, her voice thick with forced warmth. Your father and I have just been struggling a bit. You know how things are these days. The economy, the bills, what happened. I cut in, keeping my tone neutral. Another pause. Then she sighed. We had to take out some loans for Daniel's wedding, and, well, things haven't exactly been easy since then. I bit back a laugh. Oh, this was rich. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice calm, almost amused. You used my college fund to pay for Daniel's wedding. You told me to take out loans if I wanted an education. And now you want me to bail you out? She hesitated. Ethan, it's not like that, isn't it? Silence. Then, in a softer voice, she tried again. Sweetheart, we're family. Family. Funny how that word only seemed to matter when they needed something. I let the silence stretch before exhaling slowly. Loans exist for a reason, I said flatly. Her breath hitched. Ethan, a little struggle builds character, right? I added, throwing her own words back at her. You're not too old to bounce back. She went silent. I could almost hear her gears turning, trying to figure out how to manipulate me back into their good graces. Then, in a voice laced with irritation, she said, Ethan, don't be like this. We took care of you for years, gave you a roof over your head, food on the table. And now, when we need you, you're just going to turn your back on us? Ah, there it was. The guilt trip. Classic. I smiled to myself. You mean, like how you turned your back on me? That's not fair, she snapped. I shrugged. Fair would have been giving me a choice. Fair would have been at least telling me before you stole my future. Ethan, please, she tried again, her voice softening. We're just asking for a little help. Just a little help. I leaned forward, tapping my fingers on the desk. Just curious, I said, my tone still light, still easy. Why me? Another long pause. We know you've been doing well, she admitted finally. So they knew. I pictured it in my head. Daniel whining about money, Mom and Dad wringing their hands, and then someone saying, wait a minute, doesn't Ethan have money now? I let the silence stretch between us. Then, finally, I said, No. She sucked in a sharp breath. Excuse me? I said no. Her voice turned sharp. After everything we've done for you? I laughed. Everything you've done for me? You stole my college fund. You didn't even bother to check on me after I left. And now that you need money, I'm suddenly your son again? Ethan, she snapped, her patience thinning. This is your family. Families help each other. I let her words settle. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, you weren't my family when you stole my future. Silence. You weren't my family when you ignored me for a year. More silence. You only remembered I existed when you needed something. A beat passed. Then, you selfish little, I hung up. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. But I should have known they wouldn't give up that easily. A week later, I was enjoying a quiet Saturday morning in my apartment when there was a knock at my door. At first, I thought it was a delivery, but when I checked the peephole, my stomach twisted. Mom, Dad, and standing behind them, arms crossed and looking pissed, was Daniel. I exhaled sharply, muttering a curse under my breath. They weren't going to leave unless I talked to them, so I schooled my features into something neutral, unlocked the door, and opened it just a crack. Ethan, Mom said, her voice dripping with forced warmth. Sweetheart, we just wanted to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because last time we talked, you called me ungrateful and hung up on me. Dad shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. We were upset, Daniel scoffed, arms still crossed. Yeah, well, you were being a total ass. I shut the door in their faces. The knock came again harder this time. Ethan, Mom snapped. Don't you dare. I opened the door again, leaning against the frame. If you're just here to insult me, you can turn right back around. Mom took a deep breath, forcing a tight-lipped smile. We're not here to fight. We just want to have a conversation, face to face, like a family. Family. Again with that word, I folded my arms. Fine. Say what you need to say. They exchanged glances before Dad finally spoke. Ethan, we're struggling. I tilted my head. That's funny, because a year ago when I was struggling, you told me to just take out loans. Daniel groaned. Oh my God, are you still on about that? I smiled sweetly. You mean the part where my entire future was stolen from me? So you could have a Pinterest wedding? Yeah, Daniel, I'm still on about that. His face turned red. You're rich now, aren't you? It's not like you even needed college. Why does it even matter anymore? I let out a low laugh. You really don't get it, do you? I shook my head before turning back to my parents. You know, I remember when I begged you not to touch my college fund. You shrugged and said I'd be fine. You told me I'd figure it out. Mom stiffened. Ethan, that's not. I cut her off, mimicking her tone from that day. Loans exist for a reason. A little struggle builds character. You're young, you'll bounce back. Their faces dropped. I watched them squirm for a second before continuing, my voice dripping with mock concern. So why don't you take out loans? Why don't you build some character? You're not too old to bounce back, right? Daniel clenched his fists. That's not fair, I smirked. Oh, so now you care about fairness? Dad let out a long sigh. Ethan, we are your family. Families help each other. I let that sit for a moment. Then, very calmly, I said, you weren't my family when you stole my future. Silence. You weren't my family when you didn't invite me to the wedding. More silence. You weren't my family when you ignored me for a year. Daniel scoffed. God, you're such a selfish brat. I shrugged. Maybe, but at least I can afford to be. That was it. The final straw. Mom's face twisted in rage. Dad muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care. I stepped back inside, and without another word, I shut the door in their faces. This time, I didn't open it again. Another year passed. Not a word from them. No calls, no texts, just radio silence. Well, except for the occasional guilt trip messages from distant relatives. Family is forever, Ethan. You'll regret turning your back on those who raised you. I ignored them, because while they were busy drowning in their own mess, I was thriving. What started as a side hustle had turned into an empire. At 23, I wasn't just comfortable, I was a millionaire. And my family, they were losing everything. The text came out of nowhere. Mom, Ethan, please call me. It's important. I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether to respond. Curiosity won. I dialed. She picked up on the first ring, her voice breathless, almost relieved. Ethan, she exhaled, like she had just been saved from a sinking ship. Oh, sweetheart, I wasn't sure you'd answer. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. What do you want? There was a pause. Then, In a carefully measured tone, she said, "Things have been difficult." "Ah, here we go." I let her talk. She launched into a sob story how they were behind on the mortgage, how the bills were piling up, how Daniel had moved back home after his marriage fell apart, and then the real reason she called. "We need your help," she admitted, her voice trembling. I smiled to myself. "Oh," I said. "What kind of help?" She hesitated. I could hear the struggle in her silence, like she hated having to say it outright. Finally, she swallowed her pride. "Financial help," she said. "Just something to get us back on our feet." I almost laughed. The sheer audacity. I tilted my head. "Let me get this straight. You stole my future. You told me to take out loans, to struggle, to figure it out on my own. And now, when you're struggling, you expect me to bail you out? It's not like that," she said quickly. "Oh no," I mused. "How is it then?" She fumbled for an answer. "Ethan, we're family." That word again. I exhaled slowly. "You mean like how I was family when you stole my college fund?" Silence. "Or when you didn't invite me to the wedding?" More silence. "Or when you ignored me for a year?" She let out a shaky breath. "Sweetheart, please. We don't know what to do." I smiled. "You'll figure it out." Her breath hitched. "Ethan, loans exist for a reason," I continued, my tone eerily calm. "A little struggle builds character. You're not too old to bounce back, right?" I could hear her breathing shift, short, panicked. She knew I was throwing her own words back at her. I let her sit in that realization for a moment before delivering the final blow. "No," she gasped. "No, no," I repeated, voice firm. "I don't owe you anything. Ethan, you can't." I hung up. Just like that, it was over. Days passed, then weeks. At first, there were more messages, desperate, pleading. Then came the angry ones, the ones calling me selfish, heartless, ungrateful. I ignored them all, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. A few months later, I found myself back in town. Not for them, for me. I had a meeting with a real estate agent, one I was very excited about. I walked through the familiar streets, past old shops, past places that once felt like home, and then I saw it. The cafe, the one my parents had once owned, the one they had mortgaged to help fund Daniel's wedding. Now, it had a giant for sale sign in the window. I smiled. I had more than enough money to buy it outright, but I didn't. Instead, I made a call. "Hey, Sophie," I said when she picked up. "Remember when you told me to start over?" "Yeah, well," I said, still staring at the sign. "How do you feel about owning a cafe?" Her laugh was sharp, delighted. "Are you serious?" "Completely." She hesitated. "Wait, what about your parents?" I smirked. "They'll figure it out." And with that, I walked away, never looking back. Story 2. I've always wanted a sister who'd be my best friend, my confidant, the person I could run to whenever life threw its worst at me. But instead, I got Lily. Lily and I are just a year apart. She's 32 and I'm 31. Growing up, she made it clear she didn't like me. She told me so, straight to my face. The first time she said it, I was 7. I remember standing in our shared room, clutching my favorite stuffed rabbit, watching her sneer as she told me she wished I wasn't her sister. It stung in ways I didn't have the words for back then. But I loved her anyway, even when she pulled my hair during arguments, even when she shoved me into walls, even when she told my crush in 8th grade that I still slept with a nightlight just to humiliate me. I kept trying, thinking maybe one day she'd see me the way I saw her, bright, creative, effortlessly cool. But I was always just there to her, an annoying shadow she couldn't shake. While I buried myself in books and music, Lily lived for the arts. She was bold, fearless, the center of every room she walked into. She dyed her hair a different color every month, dabbled in makeup and fashion, and got tattoos before she even turned 18. Our parents were strict with me, pushing me toward academics, but Lily, she lived by her own rules. I should have expected that resentment would grow between us. I was placed a year ahead in school because I tested well, meaning we ended up in the same grade. That drove Lily crazy. She barely scraped by in her classes while I coasted with A's and B's, even though I wasn't trying to compete with her. But to Lily, everything was a competition, and she was always losing. The breaking point came in high school when she got kicked out of the drama department. Her then boyfriend cheated on her with a girl from their theater group, and instead of just breaking up with him like a normal person, Lily went ballistic. She attacked the girl, then set her backpack on fire. It was wild. Our parents had to intervene to stop the school from expelling her completely, but she still had to repeat a year. She never forgave me for not being the one our parents yelled at. I tried, even then, to be a good sister. I wrote her notes when she ignored me. I defended her when our parents lectured her. I told her she was talented, amazing, and deserved better than some cheating high school boyfriend. She never listened. Then she crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I had been dating this great guy, Daniel, for 4 months. He was sweet, kind, and genuinely seemed to like me. We were close to meeting each other's families when, out of nowhere, he ghosted me, completely blocked me on everything. I was heartbroken, but I couldn't let it go. I showed up at his place, demanding to know why, and then he told me Lily had messaged him. She fed him a whole story about how I was cheating on him, how she caught me sending inappropriate pictures to other guys. She even backed it up with fake screenshots. I was mortified. I begged Daniel to believe me, but the damage was done. He didn't want drama, and my sister was drama, so he walked away. I confronted Lily, shaking with anger, demanding to know why she did it. She shrugged. "You always get the good ones," she said. "It's so easy for you. I just wanted you to know what it's like to lose." I told our parents. They scolded her, but it didn't matter. She had already won. That was the moment I realized I could never have a life of my own if I stayed anywhere near her. So I left. I worked my ass off to secure a scholarship to study abroad. At first, it felt impossible. Money was tight, and our parents weren't exactly supportive of me leaving. But I refused to let my future be shaped by their doubts or Lily's sabotage. After a year of relentless applications, I got my shot. On my last night home, Lily did something unexpected. She apologized. "For everything," she said. I don't know what made her say it. Maybe she was relieved to finally have our parents' attention all to herself. Or maybe, for just a second, she meant it. Either way, I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to move on. The next few years were transformative. I found myself in a way I never could when Lily was overshadowing me. I lost weight, gained confidence, and built a life where I wasn't constantly bracing for the next betrayal. I graduated, struggled to land a job for a while, but eventually found success. Meanwhile, Lily stayed back home, finishing her degree and trying to find a way to join me. When she finally visited, it was like stepping back into my old life. She stayed with me for 10 days, and in that short span, she made sure to remind me of everything I had left behind. She critiqued my clothes, my hair, my friends, my job. "Wow, your office is huge," she said, but there was no warmth in it, only bitterness. "Must be nice." I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. She was always trying to make me feel guilty for the life I built. At one point, she asked if she could extend her stay and live with me for a while. That was my breaking point. I told her no. That's when she lost it. She screamed at me in the middle of a restaurant, ranting about how sick she was of being compared to me, how everyone treated me like I was better than her. I sat there, stunned, as she accused me of taking everything from her. When I pointed out that we had the same opportunities growing up, that I had fought for my place here while she didn't, she snapped. "I wish you were never born." That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I walked away. 2 days later, she flew home without another word. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. It took me a while to accept that I didn't just dislike my sister. I didn't trust her. And deep down, I knew that she wasn't done hurting me yet. I just had no idea how far she was willing to go. Cutting Lily out of my life wasn't easy. Even after everything, a part of me still hoped she'd change, that one day she'd wake up and realize how much she'd hurt me. But reality isn't a fairy tale, and my sister wasn't about to have some grand epiphany. I moved on. I met Jake. Jake and I worked in the same industry, so we kept running into each other at networking events. At first, I thought we'd just be casual friends. He was funny, easy to talk to, and had the kind of confidence that didn't need to be loud. But then he asked me out, and, well, I said yes. 2 years later, he proposed. I was so happy. After years of failed relationships, of second-guessing myself, of worrying that Lily would somehow find a way to ruin things this time, I felt safe. Jake was my person. When I told my parents, they were thrilled. My dad took an immediate liking to Jake, even inviting him out for Sunday golf. My mom was already dreaming about grandkids. Everything was perfect except for one thing. Lily. She had avoided me like the plague ever since that disaster of a visit. She refused to meet Jake, dodged family gatherings, and barely responded to my texts. Honestly, I was fine with it, but I knew what she was doing. She wasn't ignoring me because she wanted peace. She was ignoring me because she was waiting for the right moment to strike. I didn't invite her to my wedding. Not because I wanted to be petty, but because I knew she would find a way to ruin it. My parents, ever the optimists, convinced me to extend an olive branch. She's your sister, my mom reminded me. Maybe she's changed. So I sent her an invite. She never RSVP'd. On my wedding day, surrounded by my closest friends and family, I felt nothing but pure joy. We had a small ceremony in my parents' backyard, exactly how Jake and I wanted it. It was intimate, heartfelt, and absolutely beautiful. Lily never showed up. The next time I saw her was a week later, when I stopped by my parents' house to show my mom some wedding pictures. She walked in while we were talking, and the first thing she said wasn't congratulations, but, "So, are you guys having money problems?" I blinked. "What?" She smirked, leaning against the counter. "I mean, backyard wedding? Kinda screams budget crisis." I laughed because it was so ridiculous. Jake and I just don't like wasting money on things that don't matter. We wanted something small and meaningful. My mom, God bless her, jumped in. "It was beautiful, Lily. Just because something isn't extravagant doesn't mean it's not special." Lily just rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Just seems kinda sad. I should have let it go. I should have." But something in me snapped. "You know what's actually sad?" I said, meeting her gaze. "The fact that I didn't even care that you weren't there. And honestly, I'm glad you weren't." Her face twisted in anger. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few months, she started spreading little comments around the family. She told our cousins that I thought I was better than everyone now. Told my grandma that Jake was controlling because he didn't let me spend money recklessly. She was planting seeds, waiting for the perfect moment to burn everything down. And then I got pregnant. Jake and I were over the moon. My parents were ecstatic, already arguing over who would get to babysit first. And Lily? At first, she acted weirdly supportive. She asked me what names we were considering, offered to help pick out nursery decorations, and even suggested planning my baby shower. I shut that down real quick. "We're not sharing the name until the baby is born," I told her. "And Mom's planning the baby shower." She hated that. She kept pushing, saying we should include the family in the name decision. I stood firm. This was our baby, not a group project. And that's when I saw it. That flicker of resentment in her eyes. That same look she had when she destroyed my relationship with Daniel all those years ago. I knew she was up to something. The baby shower was supposed to be a simple, happy day. Just close friends and family, celebrating this new chapter of my life. And at first, it was. My mom did an amazing job with the setup, and my friends were all there, sharing advice and laughing over mocktails. Everything was perfect, until Lily walked in, wearing a bright pink shirt that said godmother-to-be. I almost choked on my drink. There was no way in hell I was making her the godmother. I hadn't even discussed it with her. I tried to ignore it. I wasn't going to let her ruin my day. Then, right before the gender reveal, she stood up in front of everyone and held up a piece of paper. "I have an important announcement," she said, her voice solemn. The room went silent. She took a deep breath, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "A few days ago, my dear sister took a paternity test, and the results came back. Jake isn't the father of her baby." I felt the world tilt. Jake turned to me, his face pale. "What?" My heart slammed against my ribs. I shook my head. "That's not true." Lily held up the paper like a game show host revealing the grand prize. "It's all right here. The test says." My mom snatched it from her hands. She glanced at the paper, then immediately looked back at Lily. "This doesn't even have her name on it," she snapped. Lily's smug grin wavered, and then she laughed. Laughed like this was some kind of joke. "I just wanted to prove a point," she declared. "I wanted to show you all how controlling Jake is. Did you see how mad he got? That's not normal." The entire room was dead silent. I saw red. "You ruined my baby shower for some psychotic experiment?" My voice shook with rage. "What is wrong with you?" Lily crossed her arms. "I was just looking out for you." "No, you weren't," I exploded. "You've never looked out for me my entire life. You've done nothing but tear me down. You're jealous, and it's disgusting." Lily's face turned red. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, her own husband stood up. Larry had been quiet the entire time, just sitting there, watching. But now, he walked up to her, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a stack of papers. "What the hell is this?" Lily snapped. Larry's face was unreadable. Divorce papers. The air in the room shifted. Everyone stared in shock as he handed them to her. "I was going to do this privately," he said, his voice eerily calm. "But since you love making scenes, I figured this was the perfect time." Lily's hands shook as she flipped through the pages, and for the first time in years, she was completely speechless. I wish I could say I felt satisfaction watching Lily get served divorce papers in front of everyone, that she deserved it, that I stood there, arms crossed, victorious. But honestly, I just felt tired of the drama, tired of her need to ruin every milestone in my life, tired of carrying around the hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd wake up one day and realize what she had lost. Lily's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. "You're divorcing me?" she whispered, like she couldn't believe it. Larry didn't even flinch. "We're toxic, Lily," he said simply. "I was gonna wait until after the baby was born to do this. But after today, I can't. I'm done." The room was dead silent. My guests, my friends, even my parents, everyone was too stunned to speak. And then Lily lost it. "Are you serious, Larry?" she screeched. "You're really gonna do this to me, right here, in front of everyone?" Larry let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, now you care about being humiliated in public? That's rich." She turned to me, eyes blazing. "This is all your fault," she spat. "You just had to embarrass me in front of everyone. You just had to make me look bad." I cut her off. "I didn't do anything, Lily," I said, my voice calm. "You did this to yourself. And for the first time in my life, I truly meant it." I wasn't gonna feel guilty. I wasn't gonna second guess myself. I wasn't gonna keep excusing her behavior because she was my sister. Lily had dug her own grave, and now she had to lie in it. She stormed out after that. I don't know where she went, but I didn't care. I was done. My mom, still reeling, grabbed my hands. "Honey, are you okay?" I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." Jake wrapped his arm around me, kissing the top of my head. "Let's go home," he murmured. And so we did. That night, as I lay in bed, my hands resting over my belly, I felt something shift inside me. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to wonder what Lily was gonna do next, because I wasn't giving her that power anymore. The aftermath over the next few weeks, the fallout was intense. Lily tried to spin the story her way, painting herself as the victim. She went around telling everyone that I had blown a harmless joke out of proportion and that I ruined her marriage. But it didn't work. Larry had receipts. Turns out, their marriage had been crumbling for a while. He told my parents that every time they fought, Lily would get violent. She'd hit him, kick him, even throw things at him. And the worst part? He showed us proof. Photos of his black eye, his broken nose from when she threw a glass at him. I was shocked. For years, I had assumed he was the problem, that he was the one mistreating her. But no, Lily had been the abuser. And suddenly, everything made sense. All those times she lashed out at me, the way she always played the victim when she got caught, how she could never handle being wrong. She hadn't just been toxic to me, she was toxic to everyone. My parents, they were done with her. After hearing everything, my mom sat Lily down and told her point blank, "You are not welcome here anymore." Lily tried to cry, to guilt trip them, but my mom wasn't having it. "You nearly destroyed your sister's marriage before it even began. You sabotaged every relationship she ever had. And now you've abused your own husband. You need help, Lily, but until you get it, we're done." That was the last straw. Lily packed her things and moved to another city. She cut off most of the family, only keeping in touch with a couple of cousins who still pitied her. Me? I didn't look back. I blocked her. Jake blocked her. We even installed security cameras, just in case she ever did decide to show up at my house uninvited. But she never did. For the first time in my life, she was gone. And honestly, it felt good. Moving forward. 8 months later, I gave birth to my baby boy, Alex. The moment I held him in my arms, I knew I would never let anyone treat him the way Lily treated me. I was going to raise him with love, respect, and kindness. Jake and I settled into parenthood, and while it was exhausting, it was also incredible. My parents were there every step of the way, and Jake's family flew in to meet the baby. Lily, she never reached out, and I was okay with that. Because at the end of the day, family isn't just about blood. It's about love, trust, and respect. And Lily had never given me any of that. So I stopped mourning the sister I wished I had and started appreciating the family I had built instead. For the first time in my life, I was free.